What sort of construction would you call that, Angus?
Well, it's a paling fence. Well, the old-fashioned way of setting it up, where you have two wires, two number 10 wires, clicking through a hole in the post, and then tie the other ends onto a piece of wood which lying in the ground. And each time you put a paling in, you twist the wires, drop the paling in, bang them up with a wooden mallet, and you drop another one in. And as you do that, the wires get shorter and pull the heavy piece of wood up. The heavy piece of wood just keeps the tension on it. That's the old way of doing it.
That's the wood down the bottom. Which is the heavy piece of wood?
Oh, well, it's not on now. It's only while you're setting the palings up. It's just to keep the wires taut.
Right.
See, normally you just have one wire and you twitch it on with a piece of tie wire.
Yeah.
But this is a much stronger way of doing it, the two number 10s.
What about the big posts, sticking them in the ground? How do you...
Well, this one's been set up one post first, and then you can only go one panel at a time, and you cut a mortise in the post, just a hole, and cut your rail to fit, and then you've got that one in, and you stick the rail in and drop this post in at the same time, and it sort of fit it in, and then tamp the post up and it's there for good. Then you do the next panel and cut the hole there, cut the hole in that post, drop it in. And you can only go one panel at a time. But
what sort of tools would you be using there to mortise and tenon the...
Chainsaw to mortise, chainsaw mainly to do all of that.
How do you get the rest of the hole out of the timber?
Oh, well, you just mark your square with a pencil or something, stick the chainsaw in, top and bottom, and it's cut right through, and then you get a crowbar, which a digging crowbar, stick it in there, and just lever and rip top and bottom, and then just pop.
What's a digging crowbar as opposed to a normal crowbar?
Yeah.
Crowbar.
Big one with a long, drawn-out point.
How far do those posts go into the ground?
They're about 2'9", 3 foot.
Do you have any securing method in the ground there, or?
No, just ram it. Rammed well with a big lead-filled bit of steel with a wooden handle. You just pack it down well. They can't go anywhere now because they're, because they've got those mortised-in rails. There's nowhere it can possibly go except fall over sideways. And then to finish it, ideally you would put a cap on the top. Mortise one into the top there.
Another bar right across the top.
Cut that off and mortise in here and go along like that.
What sort of timber are you using there?
That's all iron bark. Every bit of that's iron bark. These are old rails my grandfather made for a set of cattle yards he made when he was young, when we had to tear them down. So there's a second time around for those. They're 60, 80 years old.
What's the timber like to work with, the ironbark?
Oh, it's good. It's a bit splintery and it's hard to nail, but there's no need to use nails on this stuff. But these ironbark posts, they were just lying out in the paddock. They're pre-seasoned, and the palings were split from. You can make them like a fence post and just split them then. It's all instead of only about 4 years old, they already started to get lichen and stuff growing on them there.
Fencing or just lichen?
Well, you can do it yourself, and it doesn't. A paling is infinitely more strong. I could have done this with what they call palings from the sawmill, which was sawn, inch by 4s, 4x1s or something. But they're hopeless because compared to these, see, one of these. Well, this isn't a very good example, but say one of those, that fella there, you could drive over that with a truck and you wouldn't break it. There's so much more strength in something that's split because there's all what you see is there's no cross grain there. It's all true. When you cut a piece of wood, you cut across the grain and there's only a limited amount of strength.
How would you actually cut palings then? You'd split them rather than saw them?
Yeah, they're all split, these. I could I could start off with a chainsaw and a log like that. Put the chainsaw in there and cut him right down the middle to the centre of the post only, cut down like that, go all the way down, then come around and do it again. Keep going until I've cut all the way around like a pie. Then split them out with a wedge up the top here, stand at the end of the block and split them out. And you have a pie-shaped piece of wood then. It's like that with the round outside bark edge there. Right? So you set that into a hole in the ground, dig a hole in the ground about 1 foot deep, drop this 3'6" pie-shaped piece of timber into it, and you have a paling knife, which is I'll show you later, is a broad piece of steel about that long with a wedge shape, and then at the end it has a hole which you push a piece of wood into, so you've got this right angled knife, and you place that on top of the paling billet, like so, then strike it with a wooden mallet till it enters the wood, and just give it a pull like that with the handle, and that levers the piece of wood off the billet. Sometimes you have to follow it down a bit, but normally you can get it in a couple of hits and a pull, and tap them on and pull, and it'll pop off. So once you get going, you can knock up those enough to do that run there, 6 panels in 2 hours, hour and a half. Once you get into it and you've got the materials on hand, you get about 4 or 5 palings out of each billet, and then the last piece you get, it's about quite a big piece, and it's got that bark on it, and it's very hard to get it to be thin. You end up with this really lumpy looking thing. It's more like a slab, and then you save them, and after a big paling job you've got enough of those flitches on the outside to make garden type arrangements. You can, here's one here that I use for the garden. See, they're slabs. They're really solid and quite usable for other things.
What other kinds of timber could you use for this sort of work?
Yellow stringy bark, messmate. Any of the stringy barks will be fine. Turpentine. Turpentine's really good splitting timber. Beautiful to work, and nail is best for shingles, the ones you have to put a nail in for the roof. They're a gorgeous timber to work. You can split them very thin and then put a nail in them 1 inch from the end and they won't split, whereas piece of iron bark, you have to drill all those, you just can't get a nail through it. Stringy barks, iron barks. Iron bark's best for pilings. Stringy bark's best for shingles. Turpentine's good for shingles. Tallow wood is okay for both. Virtually anything you can split will serve some useful function, but turpentine is wonderful on the roof because it's resistant to bugs and crawlies and things that eat the wood. It depends on the sort of application. I think for straight out fencing pilings, you can't beat the old iron bark. It's just such strong, tough sort of old wood. This is a thing I've developed for splitting shingles. It's not actually perfect for palings. Palings, you're better off with just to dig a hole in the ground and drop them in. And you then lay the knife across here, and you that's a bit of a long one, but you can split that out in a couple of hits, and levers. And for a shingle, you only have them about 24 inches long. And the same process, you rip them out like a fence post. Probably the best thing to do if you want to make some is just buy fence posts. Have them delivered, about $2 each delivered. And then all you've got to do is cut them up into, say for a paling, you get 2 palings out of a fence post, and 3 or 4 shingle billets out of a fence post. So even old fence posts, if you can find them, can be handy for that sort of thing. So with the shingles, you drop them into this apparatus here, and that way you can work them both ways. You've got complete control over the piece of wood. On the ground is too short, and if you just sit it on a block of wood, you go all over the shop. You've got no control over it. Whereas if you stick it in here, you can wedge it into that crack and work it, and you can put another little board in there and really sort of cramp it up and get into it.
Where'd you get here from there?
Oh, just came to me one day. Just cut out with a chainsaw. Scrounge materials, while I'm working, and over a period of several demolition jobs accumulated enough crappy old iron to put on the roof. The posts came from all salvage sort of operations, just posts that were lying around this property. They're not particularly anything to write home about, but they do the job. The rafters I cut one day from out in the paddock. They're pole rafters, and it's just been built on the weekends. Really, it's not something I'm absolutely proud of, but it's very functional and serves to keep the rain off my tools.
How long do you reckon it actually took you to build?
Not too long. It was over a long period, but I only had the odd day on it. But it's all made. It's cost about $40, that shed, to build. That's nails and a bit of wire. It's all put together with wire. There's no bolts in it. Cobbin code hitch.
So what's that called?
This is a paling knife or a shingle froe, paling froe. As you can see, it's fire welded here. It has to be fairly broad across the top here, because that's what's doing the splitting for you. It doesn't have to be very sharp. As you can see, that's not terribly sharp. Just sharp enough to drive into the wood. And what you do is you cut with a tomahawk. You cut a little wooden. You just get a piece of wood that long, and sharpen the end for a handle, and bang away. And over the course of a day, you wear one of those out and chuck it away and make another one. You have a wooden handle in here.
Is it a tight-fitting wooden handle or just loose?
Yeah, well, you have to shape them a bit. You have to have it a bit fatter at the top of the hole there, and then when it comes to the bottom, you wedge it so it can't travel up the handle and can't fall off the bottom either. So I don't have a working model here, but it's quite a bit of work in making a handle for one.
How long is it? Your handle a lasting thing?
Yeah, the handle should last for ages. The one I've got has lasted me for years, if it's well looked after and properly made. But if you just put an ordinary axe handle type one, it'll shimmy up it'll go up like an adze. It's not. It'll work its way up the handle. So you have to have this shape, the sort of knob on the top of it, and then wedge it from the bottom. But then once you got that, it's a pretty simple operation.
Where did you actually get the ideas from, or the clues from?
I did a shingling school with a bloke called Tom Hutton from Cecil Plains, he'd be about 86, 87. He decided something should be done to pass on the skills, and in about 1974, I think it was, he had a shingling school up at Binnaburra Lodge, and taught us how to do the basic craft. I don't know if any of the others have kept it up, but I certainly have.
How many shingle buildings have you made?
I made some around the house here, just general purpose sort of goat sheds and things. Made one at the Brisbane Independent School, about 4,000 ironbark shingles, mainly the kids made. They were breaking my sledgehammer handles and things like that on the job, and one in the Lions Club in Crow's Nest. Replica of the old dairy at John Darien. There's about 4,000 in that. It's a triangular shaped roof, hip roof. Where else have I done? These big wall plaques here came out of the tank stand. They've been up on the top of a tank for all my lifetime, and they're quite solid still. I started off putting them in, then I built this loft here with all the old sort of tubular ones. It's a 2-inch floor. That's just junk, all this is just rubbish I've collected that was being thrown out from other jobs. tie these roll plates across, and drilled holes in the top of the rafters, bolted them up. Then I had this posted at either end. I just bolted a big pole right along through there as a dummy wall plate, a dummy ridge beam. Shoved the two rafters over the top of that, bolted them up, and they were just sitting there. Then I came down to the bottom and just hacked them off with a chainsaw till they sat down nicely on the wall plate. Then we moved the phony ridge beam, and it's quite a good way of doing it. Then the veranda here was an afterthought. I just got some old lumps of 3x3 and stuck them up there and put a twitch around them, which is incredibly strong. It's Queensland hitch. Drop the rafters on. It's all pretty basic construction.
With your wire work, what do you use to actually twitch with? A bar or
Fair pliers. It's all done with the handle of the pliers.
or fencing pliers?
Yeah, fencing pliers. You just you put the two, you measure out your circumference of the thing you want to twitch, double it and add a bit, and you bend the wire back on itself, put it through, put the handle of the pliers through the twitch, take the other end of the wire, the two loose ends, hook it around the pliers and bend it back around the handle of the pliers, and then you start to twitch then. You tight, make sure it's nice and firm before you actually start to twitch. But it's better than a bolt, much better than a bolt.
Tell me about the Jacko.
Right, this is a Jacko steam generator, freely available in Queensland. All the old dairies had them, and they used to sterilise the cream calves and cream lines with them. It's just a little basic steam engine. You just fill it up with wood. Fill this up with water, which I do by just sticking it through the top of the escape valve. The escape valve is a heavy piece of lead with a ball on the end. You just pour the water in there until it's full. Drop the escape valve back in. Make sure it hasn't rusted on. That's the only trouble you can get into in one of these. If that's rusted on, then it'd blow yourself to bits. Shut everything down. Make sure all the taps are turned off. Right. Fill it with water. Steam comes out about once the water's boiled and produces steam, we then run the steam into this old tank here. In about an hour, 2 hours, it'll heat 200 gallons of water to bath temperature, which is pretty phenomenal considering you're only throwing a handful of wood, an arm or two of wood. You can also run a Turkish bath off one if you run the steam into a small airtight room. It's a really marvellous Turkish bath.
What are the controls on them actually, Angus?
This is an old, should have a glass tap, a glass.
Oh yeah, that's the water level.
Read the water level. These I'm not sure. I think they're just for small steam outlets, for very small applications. Pressure gauge. They should be certified, these, by the steam board or whatever, to make sure that they'll only go up to 15 pounds. That's the size valve, escape valve that's got there. It'll only take 15 pounds pressure. You can also I do the washing with it. Just run the steam over here into the tubs. You can boil water and boil one of those in about 5 minutes. Cappuccino coffees are really good. You just get your big cup of milk and stick it under them.
That's a pretty big cappuccino maker.
Yeah, it's a en masse cappuccino maker.
What sort of timber's that?
This is all yellow stringy bark, or messmate as we call it around here. It's not the gimpy messmate, but it's pretty close. Beautiful wood. Got sort of fiddleback growing when you see it in the right angle. Now this has been incorrectly laid. I made the materials and my girlfriend and a few of her friends built the structure, and they didn't quite get it right, but it was supposed to be a layer of 2 shingles here at the bottom. We put one layer down like that, turn another layer, over the top, and you just cover the cracks each time, which means, you have to sort out the shingles and cover them. You'll have a biggish one there, then a fairly narrow one there, and a narrow one, and then a bigger one. And once you've got a layer of 2, get the water off the eaves, you then come back to 1/2 or 1 or 2/3 overlap. You can please yourself if you want a layer of 2 or a layer of 3 on the roof. Properly, you should have a layer of 3, which means that you sneak these down so they're about there.
But so what's wrong with this one?
Well, there's nothing wrong with this. This is waterproof. But if you want to make a really good job of it, you overlap them 2/3 instead of 1/2. This is just lapped 1/2. But it's quite sufficient. You would be amazed because of the steep pitch, the water gets a bit of speed up and it stays in all the little cracks and grooves. And it's very difficult for it to get through and back into that crack. And on a really rainy day, you can go in there and for a crap and you're right, you don't get wet. But there's quite a few things like that. And when you get to the top, you should cut them in half and have a dummy row up the top and all that. But that's the main thing, to cover the cracks. They're nailed up underneath there into the battens. The battens, you have to have a lot of battens.
What happens at the top? How do you cap it?
Well, in this case, it's just a bit of bark. But the best thing to do is to get a bit of tin and nail that over your ridge cap, and then lay the shingles on top of the tin. The iron. It just sheds the water back. Otherwise, you can just cut a shingle in half and overlap it, and then put some boards up, mitered boards. That's quite effective.
Do you have any problems with
example?
Right? Do you have any problems with white ants or borers?
I haven't had yet. I don't think. So this stuff won't burn. That's why it's very good for shingles. The yellow stringy bark. It's fire retarder. It just doesn't want to burn. I don't know how it goes with borers, but it's worth its weight in gold because it won't burn.
So if you did it in thirds, you'd have more
Yeah.
battens.
To do it properly, you have a batten every 6 inches, and your paling's 18 inches long. These are 2-foot palings and only half lap, so you do it all in about half the time, and it's still very.
One of your basic tools, Angus.
Yeah. These rakers are too high. This is a brand new chain. Hasn't had the rakers touched yet. So I'll just rip off about 2 strokes on each should be sufficient. That'll make the saw really bite. Because they can be sharp. The cutting part can be sharp, but if these rakers are too high, then it won't penetrate the wood properly.
You're putting an angle onto the rakers there.
They should be just flat with a curved front.
You're only flattening every second one.
Well, I have to go around the other side to do that. If you always work away, you can't sort of file that one. You have to do it from that side.
So this gives you more depth of cut than you get.
Yeah.
As it was.
Just makes it bite more, you know.
If you're doing cabinet work, you wouldn't do it.
Well, I just like them to really chomp wood, you know. Yeah, this will cut at the moment, especially cross-cutting. It'll cut quite adequately, but if I want to do any mortising, which involves piercing the timber and cutting some of it sort of with the grain, then it's too slow and without these taken back. I have a little mark here, which is about 30 degrees, which I stick to fairly well. You only want to take about 3 strokes on these if it's sort of in reasonably good shape. Otherwise, you waste all your.
How often do you resharpen your chain?
Or if it's at all blunt, you sharpen. It just saves you a lot of work in the long run. And if you hit a rock or something, you can take a tip off. Well, you have to sharpen it again. Maybe you have to sharpen it twice to get that damage out of the chain. You know, you avoid rocks and dirt or anything like that. Anything you're cutting should be off the ground. Should never touch the ground or the grass or anything like that.
If you have one that's down a bit, is it going to cut in relationship to the rest, or do you have to take them all down the same amount?
Well, if you've got one if you hit a rock and take the tip clean out, it won't cut well until you get right back to that again. You know, especially, you know, once you start knocking them off, that puts more pressure on the one behind and you'll knock it off and eventually you'll have no chain left at all. You just stroke away from it. And you never pull the file back in the same cut. You've got to take the file out.
What's the story with that bar? That's what's it called, a banana bar?
What I call a banana bar. This is the part that kicks back. This section around here. On a normal bar, this goes right around, you know, semicircle. Whereas this one's the part that kicks back, which is just there, has been minimised. It's mainly for mortising.
Very neat. What were
And
you
that's-
doing there to start with? You were tapping the crowbar on the side.
Oh, just missed the hole, that's all.
Ah,
No, you just slide it down there and down the top, and that should bust it off.
gee.
Then that piece, that's what you use to set up your rail, which I'll. So then you sit him up so he's about level. That's the way. So you want it to go in.
You don't just glue it on with super glue.
We'll just put him in like that. I'll get a pencil. Hang on. Here's a black marking pen to this. So there's a cut width of a chainsaw cut there to allow for. So I'll leave that line, and that's allowing from a chainsaw cut. I should fit.
Very neat.
A bit sloppy. Took a bit to this out.
What was the business about the jig that you've made to do that?
Well, the jig saves that mistake. So normally I would have I've got a jig that's got a sliding square set into it. And I just stick that in the hole, slide the square up so it's exactly the size of the hole, come around and it's got a level on the side. So that when I set it up, get the level right, I can do both ends and be sure that they're... See, now if I wanted to do the other end of that to fit in the other end, it would be difficult to get it on exactly the same angle, but by using a jig and the water bubble, I can get it dead right.
Do you use your jig for cutting the hole as well, or just
for setting up the marks on the end.
right? How do you line up the? Oh, I suppose you just swivel the post to get your line up.
Well, in this case, see, with these, I put the jig in there, and in the other end, lay this on its back, I can mark them both out and fit them in one go. Right, you start off, you put all your posts in, make sure that the inside edge is in line by sliding through. Once your inside edge is in line, you're right to measure out. Well, what you do is you get a stick, work out how wide you want your rails to be apart, and mark that on a stick. And you go along to all the posts and mark off the top and bottom of each scarf, right? Once you've done that, well, probably the best way to do it is to set up on the end ones first, put a nail in and string line them through. That'll give you a dead straight run if it's fairly flat ground. Once you've got your marks, come along with your chainsaw, say on this one, cut out the scarf to the correct depth, and the way you find the depth is to get a piece of 3x2 and put a board along the edge here up against the posts, and then say the board comes along here, you put the 3x2 on the end 3x2 in there, and that'll give you the same distance back from the edge of each post. And you put a level on that piece and mark off all your lines at the back here, right? So that means you've got a line there and a line there. So you just cut all them out then. Once you've got them cut out, it's just a matter of getting a stick, putting it into the gap, measuring the length of your rail, you know, and then laying the rail down on the ground, putting the stick on it, cutting it to length, then using the jig that I told you about, put the jig in the scarf, find out the correct width for the scarf. You've got these lying on their backs. You go along to the end grain, mark out your cut it off, lift it up, plop it in, and should just stay there then. Should fit nice and snugly.
How long has this been up for, Angus?
This has only been up about 6 months. These are all old hospitals, old house stumps. And these are old dead trees that are out in the paddock I cut up, iron barks. So there's no shrinkage in this job. These cuts won't shrink away, and they should stay just about like that. They won't get gappy or anything over time.
What's the advantage of using the wire rather than bolting or screwing?
Well, bolting's very expensive, and a wire can be replaced easily. Once you have an old bolt, it's very hard to get the end off it, the nut off it. Whereas these, if they get loose or happen to break, well then you just pull them out and put another one in. They're incredibly strong. You know, you can. That one's a bit loose now, so if I just went around there and gave it a twitch with the pliers, it'd just bring it up tight again. It's cheap and effective. Stay, which is, in my opinion, more effective than the bottom stay. Cut a mortise in the post, fit that in there, come back to here, put a bit of a scarf in this top rail and drop it on there, twitch that around there so it can't go anywhere. Then you drill a hole down the bottom of the post, and then the top of this one. This can't move anywhere, hopefully, it's pretty solid. So you're straining off that, holding the top of this post in. And you do that by just putting a piece of number 8 wire right around, tying it off down here, and putting your pliers in the centre and twitching it up till it starts to really pull. And then you have to do it, of course, before you put the wires into the fence. But that hole's, there's no way that can go backwards now. It's impossible.
And with all your twitching, they're all away from the yard. They're all on the outside.
Yeah, all the way from the yard. Yeah, don't want the twitches into the horse's flesh. And then to make a really good job of it, you do it twice. You run this one right through to there, and have another one going down here. And that is absolutely immovable then. Okay. Now, supposing you've fitted your rails, drill a hole, sort of keeping on line with the side of the post, so like that.
What do you normally use to drill with?
I've got an attachment for the chainsaw, and sew all over in about 2 seconds.
If it wasn't for that, what would you use?
If it wasn't for that, I'd use a hand auger.
Right.
But it's very quite time consuming. But it can be done. Okay. And to find out, just wrap this around, add a bit. That's one strand of the Queensland hitch. Then you have to fold it the right direction, back on itself, like that. See? So they're both sort of congruent and parallel. Oh, and you you really need 2 people for a big job like this. But pass the booth through here. one at a time is the best. Don't make sure the strands aren't twisted in the holes. They've got to be parallel. Now, if I was doing this on a job, I'd have another bloke with a hammer around here doing this quite neatly as I pull them up. Having done that, make sure the strands are all coming through evenly, not twisted. Okay, you hold on to these there, put the one handle of the pliers through there, and just walk them back till they're tight. Then put a kink in those, right? Put a kink around the handle of the pliers, and it's a piece of cake then. Is it what? 1 or 2 turns should make that absolutely. You don't want to over tighten them, that's enough. You'll find that is rock solid now. Then clip these, fold them back so that the horses can't damage themselves on them. Let's cob and co. Crooked lock.
You're retightening.
Retightening and just give him a little more. One turn puts on an enormous amount of pressure, so that's tightened that up. That was a bit loose.
What happens if you over tighten now?
It'll break. You have to do it again.
It'll break the wire, or
break the strands, yeah. Yeah, if you over tighten it, I'll show you what'll happen. It'll just destroy itself. Put a kink in it. Pass the top one through first. So, watch your fingers. Which way is? Jesus, short. Bit bottom?
Yep.
Right.
Oh wait,
So,
sit on this one.
Twist it, you bang it straight. Alright.
We give it a bit more of a pull, is that?
That'll pull itself, and if you just got them bang in a bit, that'll be fine.
Well, now.
Too short. Bit short that element, but it's still a hitch.
so you reckon one of the main advantages is the cost saving?
Sure.
Now you've got 3.
Well, with this way, you only have to drill through the rail. You don't have to drill through the post as well.
Yeah,
Save
save your time as well.
Yeah.
You'd reckon it'd almost give you some flexibility too if an animal pushes against it or
Yeah, well,
kicks it.
bolts are awful because once they're old, you can't do anything with them. You know, it's like rust on. You've got a real, problem getting them out and replacing them.